Hello and welcome to episode 24 of Pixel Sift. I'm Gianni and I'm Gianni, and as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts Mitch and Scott.
Hey.
Hello.
Thanks. James is on the video phone, probably very happy that he doesn't have a microphone in front of him right at the moment. On today's show, we have an interview with Matt Comi. He's from Big Bucket Software, the studio that are behind the games Space Age and The Incident.
Yeah, we're also in this show, we are trying to identify the hurdles between in transferring digital ownership between users.
Yes, and finally, we're talking cross-platform play. The walls between consoles may be in the process of breaking down.
All that, and we'll also be announcing the winners of our World's Fastest Pizza competition coming up later in the show, and all of that coming up on episode 24 of Pixel Sift.
Visit us on pixelsift.com.au.
Yeah, okay, so you can buy and sell any physical goods that you own, but what about your digital stuff? You know, your Steam library, your Twitter account, also your sweet collection of weapons in any MMO you might play. But to what extent do these elements belong to you? So,
now, the reason why we're talking about this is because recently there's been a partnered Twitch streamer, and partnered Twitch streamers sort of start making money off being a high-profile Twitch streamer on thing, and they've got a revenue source. They've split up with their husband, and the account and all the assets and everything for that particular account has now been transferred away from the person who was actually the main personality on the actual Twitch stream. The account, Scott, is...
ARA Gaming. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but ARA_gaming.
And basically they've now, through the divorce proceedings, has had the assets sort of split up, and there's been a sort of transfer of this particular content across to someone else. You know, this is different to a lot of other things, but it's an online sort of persona. The person who creates the content is the one who sort of was in charge of it, and they're known as ARA Gaming.
Yeah.
But now it's been given away to someone else, and the revenue source of that has been given away to someone else as well.
Look, a lot of it's not exactly known because there are legal proceedings and whatever, and there's been some kind of, silence clauses and whatever signed. But what we can gather from this so far is that, there's been a divorce, and they've been sold. Basically, the stream's been sold as an asset, and this person's bought it. How it's been sold and how it's all gone down is completely up in the air. But this stream has 30,000 fans. I mean, it's still up in the kind of 28-ish thousand area, even after this new person's taken over it. But they've started an ARA Gaming Gate type thing. It's a big hullabaloo.
It's very interesting because now we've got people who, have the accounts are online. It's kind of, I guess, a business as well because people are pulling in money for this. And in normal sort of proceedings, when you're dividing up assets between people, you can, split these businesses down the line and all that sort of stuff. But this person here is basically they're selling it on their own back, and now have basically lost access to that.
It all seems pretty black and white until it's not, I guess. It
seems morally black and white, sure, or ethically black and white. But, as far as digital ownership goes and digital content, we've always had this kind of lack of ownership issues. It's non-transferable rights, basically.
It just seems like if you own the license to something, even on let's say, for example, Steam, a real ownership, you should be able to do whatever you want with that license. You should be able to sell it to whoever you want for however much you want, or you should be able to just give it to someone or transfer it to someone else. But you can't really do that. So do you actually own it? That's the thing.
The other question as well is
because you sure as hell paid money for it.
Yeah, and this is a contract that someone would have signed with Twitch in order to get the partnership as part of that. So is it possible then if people get to a point and they say, hey, look, I'm sick of streaming, can I sell my account now because this person was able to trade it away through that proceeding? Is it a transferable thing? Is that invalidation of the contracts that you would be signing?
Then in that case, what are you actually selling? Are you selling the account? Are you selling your content? Or are you selling that user base that's invested in you?
Well, I feel like you're selling just like you would if you sold a shop. You're selling the name and the setup and whatever, but I mean, that's probably different actually because there's a tangible thing, I guess. You're not going to be selling all your microphones and equipments. Again, this is a downside of digital ownership. There's no
similar examples.
It's intangible objects.
You see similar examples with people who use online accounts for review purposes and things like on Reddit, for example, as well. People will basically farm a good rating in the thing and then sell that onto advertisers so that people will use that to put advertising out there, but it has a good reputation attached to it. And that's only it's an account that you're not supposed to transfer your accounts between lots of different other people, but there's that sort of aspect to it, and it's still sort of in this weird sort of, I don't know, morally ambiguous sort of situation.
Yeah, and what makes this really interesting, I think, is apart from us talking about the general digital ownership of say Steam libraries and stuff like that, where it's not transferable, it's just accounts that kind of have the rights to use it. Like you said, she's got a contract signed with Twitch, so I feel like everything's kind of happened really quickly with the selling of this account, and I don't know if it's all being done
Well, it's not
legitimately.
even sold really, because it's a division of assets.
Yeah, this wasn't really a sale.
But somebody's purchased this channel. No,
Well, presumably, we don't know that someone else has taken over the channel now and is now running it.
So it's
who's
all
not
these
the original
assumptions of-
person, so we don't know exactly about this. But the account itself has been transferred via a court to someone else, and now someone else is running it who wasn't the original person who
Also, I think
Strange.
there's the issue of access versus ownership. So, like, I can give someone access to something, but to what extent do they own it as well? But like, because a computer doesn't know. Like a computer, like I could log into something and then I get up and leave, and then you sit down on my computer, and then do you now suddenly, since I've logged into it, you're now acting as me, I guess?
Well,
you don't get the same rights as prints and books. So like
Yeah.
you're just owning a license to use the digital files, and that's all.
It is in a lot of these contracts that you sign with all these things. You are signing a non-transferable license personally between you and the company. So, for example, no one will probably pull you up on someone coming over to your house and playing on your Steam library, for example.
Yeah.
Right. But if you gave your password out to someone else to log into your account, then that is against the terms of service of the particular deal. And one of the things that people are really interested in, and something that we haven't quite worked out yet because we haven't reached that sort of legal precedent yet, but people have got these big libraries of things. iTunes is one example.
Yes.
Steam libraries, other
Kindle
online
books.
other things as well
Yeah.
that people have purchased, and they've got a long-term license for this particular thing until the company kind of decides that the license is over. But do you pass those licenses on to your descendants or people who you
When you
name
pass
as
away?
your next of kin?
Yeah.
That's the thing, yeah.
Do they just disappear? Is it a license like that? That's something that we still haven't quite worked out yet. And I think with similar situation to this one here, where the account has been transferred over to a former partner, because it would technically be considered a shared asset, moving it to one asset would be like a house, for example. Like, how does it work? We don't.
Well, there's certain, it depends on the platform we're talking about, I guess. I mean, the Xbox has options with its game sharing options, making a separate Xbox its home Xbox, etc. But I mean,
But at the end of the day, only one Xbox can be the home Xbox.
yeah.
So,
Well, as far as,
And it's almost,
I think as
and
far
this
as
is different as well, because one person has now lost access to
Yeah.
this particular account in terms of like, okay, you've both got access to it and you can share it with other people like you would share a normal physical game. But now this one person, and it's the same as when people sell accounts in, World of Warcraft, for example. People would sell high-level accounts to other people against the terms of service, so you can lose access to that account as well. So, it's a really complex issue, and I think we're going to sort of see more of this as it sort of progresses along.
as this technology gets older and people
we get older,
People who
start
own these
knocking
things
off.
we don't know, because for example, like I remember Jimmy Barnes, who's a famous Australian singer, said that he has this huge iTunes library and he wants to be able to pass it on to his kids when he passes away.
Well, imagine, I read something, imagine if your parents, had tens of thousands of songs in their library, or records, or books, or whatever. You would be kind of upset if all those assets were just gone and taken away from what you think is, something that belonged to your parents. I mean, the simplest alternative here is just kind of, leave your devices and accounts, the access to them to your children or next of kin or whatever.
And I think that's the recommendation that a lot of people give, that you should have somewhere in your will where you've got a list of all your passwords.
And stuff. Yeah, I mean, we live in a digital era. Doing that kind of thing, it just makes sense. But there should be some kind of actual legal way for us to do it without just giving up our passwords.
So let's say that the passwords
legal
were
protection.
not. Let's say the passwords they're not written down. If a will says that these people get the account, is it up to is the company bound to give the password out?
It's up
I
to-
don't think so.
I don't know.
It's really
Yeah.
open to interpretation. And this is very interesting because they're talking about this with the San Bernardino iPhone,
Yeah.
in that a company and a law enforcement can't compel a company to decrypt something. And that's a really interesting legal precedent, which is going to have impact on these sort of things as well.
Yes.
Because exactly that. People do want to get access to people's accounts because maybe someone's passed away, but they've got a whole bunch of photos that they'd like to download, or they'd like to put a message up and say, thank you, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's something we're going to have to... Time will tell.
I think we'll talk
effectively.
about this again.
Yeah, we'll time will tell. Something's going to come up, and we'll find out more about this as it goes along. But we don't really know at this stage. So let's jump into our next topic.
Did you know PixelSiv is available on other platforms? You can find previous episodes on iTunes, Pocket Casts, YouTube, and on the PixelSiv website.
Earlier this week, I had a chat to Matt Comi. He's one part of Big Bucket Software, a game development company that has started, I guess, a collaboration between places on two sides of the planet, basically. And we asked him a little bit about how he came to build his game Space Age, and also the first game that he brought out, which was called Incident, and working between the different places in the planet where his team exist, and sort of the games that he liked to play and the games that he likes to make.
My name's Matt Comi. I have been running a tiny software company called Big Bucket. Started out making little dashboard widgets and stuff like that, and then moved to iPhone, and I made a couple of apps first, and then sort of had the breakout with a couple of games. So made the Incident and Space Age with my artist colleague Nevin Mergen in Portland. So we're a 3 man shop. I write the code, Nevin does the art, and Cable Sassa does the music. And yeah, that's what we've been doing as a trio, I suppose, since what's that, 2011, I think that's right. Yeah, it's pretty hard to remember dates, but that's about right.
What are some of the biggest changes that you've noticed in the time from developing the Incident and then going into a much more modern, a much more developed app sort of infrastructure and environment now with Space Age?
Well, I think when the Incident came out, that was pretty much what the scope of all indie games. I mean, I might be misremembering, or it's what I perceived the environment to be, but certainly indie developers at the time were making pick up and play kind of games, and that was all there really was, and they cost money and you paid for them, and that was all there was to it. And now those kinds of games do still exist, but they're free. Typically they're free, or at least the ones that you still hear about are. So something like Crossy Road. Crossy Road could have existed years ago, but you would have paid 99 cents for it. And I guess it probably wouldn't have been as successful as it has been now. Not to say it's anything about the quality, but it's just the scope of what a success is nowadays is dramatically higher than I think it used to be. And now the field, I guess, the definition of indie game now is much broader. There are big games and there are small games, and there are games that you pay for. There are games that are free. There's in-app purchase and there's not. It's a bigger market to sort of, I guess, stand out in. And really, after we made the Incident, our immediate sort of the direction we wanted to take Big Bucket next was to make something big, and so that was not a reaction to the market or anything like that. It was just, now let's make a game that we would have played as kids, rather than what we perceived to be something that would work on an iPhone. Like, we didn't actually know whether Space Age would would really have that much of an audience, given that that's not what people do on their iPhones or iPads even, really. They don't sort of sit down on the couch and get engrossed in it. It's the sort of thing you pick up and you play waiting in line and on the bus and stuff like that. So we're glad that it did work out that way. But yeah, that really, I guess that sort of roundabout answers your question, just that it's like, it used to be much more of the niche. There is still, the way that we, what the incident was is still around today, but it exists as a smaller part of a much broader sort of range of games.
Both the Incident and Space Age have got a sort of a beautiful sort of retro styled art design. You said that you kind of wanted to make the games that you'd played in your youth and the games that you'd played and thing. Was that the main consideration when you're making a game like this, or was it just something that made more sense for the sort of game that you were trying to make?
Yeah, that had a pretty weird history. I mean, it started off as I pitched it. Because it's interesting, because it looks like a vision, like a the realization of a vision, but really it is the product of a whole bunch of little decisions along the way, and so I remember the initial pitch was I just wanted to make a real-time strategy, like a straight up real-time strategy with infantry and tanks and guns and whatever, terrain, just like a Red Alert. Red Alert was probably, I mean, it's in my top 5, right? From when I was a kid, it's one of my top 5 games, and I just wanted to make it. And so, Nevin then came back with, well, can it be not people killing people? And I was like, cool, works for me. What are they killing? He's like, aliens and humans. Excellent, aliens and humans. Now we need a theme. All right, well, and then he said, have you seen Forbidden Planet? I said, no, I haven't seen it. He goes, well, check it out. Here's a picture, like here's a still. I go, okay, I really like that aesthetic. And so it just sort of developed from there. But ultimately, it started as, let's make a real-time strategy, because I loved that game as a kid, and then of course it molded into a sort of hybrid with an adventure game, and that is because I think I can speak for Nevin as well in saying that adventure games were our favorite games as kids. Like, so it was Red Alert for me, and Monkey Island 2 stand out as like defining, how it is that I came to be a computer game developer. And so, yeah, Space Age is, I guess, it's like a bit of a love letter to that kind of thing. And that is the retro aesthetic. I don't know if we can, I guess we can put it down to that, because really I don't play many games nowadays. So when I think of computer games, I think of the kind of games that we make, because that's kind of the last time that I was engrossed in that sort of culture.
With stuff that you're working on in the future, is it something that are you going for that same sort of idea with what you're trying to make, and are they sort of reminiscent or referential to the games that you played while growing up?
Yeah, and they're kind of a little bit. I mean, nothing's that concrete yet, but they are. It feels like evolving with as we are progressing as sort of a studio, so are the games sort of progressing with the consoles of the history that we're recreating, so it's kind of like the Incident was meant to be something that looked like it could maybe be played on Nintendo, but really it couldn't have. It's because of the crazy, the physics that is happening and the rotation of the objects that's happening. It could never have existed on that platform, but it almost looks like it could have. And then, from there it's going to be, well, what about Super Nintendo, and then Nintendo 64 and that sort of thing. And so I take it, I suspect, I mean, I can't say, it's just that we have plans that we'll have something that sort of looks a little bit like a Nintendo 64 sometime in the future. It's just like something I would like to start tinkering with 3D, but not modern 3D, more sort of like really retro shaded, low poly models, that sort of thing.
Matt Comi of Big Bucket Software. We will stick a link up to their page. You can go to spaceageapp.com or bigbucketsoftware.com and check out their stuff. They've got more stuff in the pipeline, but yeah, it might be a few years until that all comes out, but we'll be definitely keeping an eye on that one.
You're listening to Pixel Sift.
So, when choosing to enter the gaming world, one is faced with the major question of what platform to align yourself with. Sure, we may float from one to another, but generally our loyalty is with one. Now our problems will seemingly be solved as Microsoft has just announced that it intends to open up its access with cross-platform play across PC and other consoles. Now this is on the back of, this is coming to light because they've announced this week that Rocket League players will be able to play Xbox PC cross-platform which is great.
The one thing I'm really interested about this is, sure, you can probably play against other people on different consoles, but are you going to be able to join a game that your friend might be on an Xbox and you're on a PlayStation? Are you going to be able to invite them in, or are they just going to be on any old thing? Because that's the real key interest.
So also, what's your friends list going to look like now?
Well, currently, with say, because this does exist already. Sony have come out and said, like old news, been doing it for 14 years or whatever. It's in 2002, I think it goes back to, with Final Fantasy 11, PS2 and PC support. Anyway, the way it works currently, basically, is that you can't really. You need to open private games to enable yourself to be able to play with PC or whatever. Like this is with like Rocket League anyway.
So there's no matchmaking.
You can't just match up, and there's no cross-platform chat, and there's all sorts of other problems. But the biggest one, I think, anyway, as a console gamer, and knowing that the PC master race is probably a little bit quicker on the draw, is exactly that. Like the PC kids absolutely owning, or the PC people owning the console people.
One of the big examples, I mean, this isn't a new idea that people on a PC can play against things, as you said, with Final Fantasy. One of the other ones that actually came out really early in the piece was the original Shadowrun game, which came out on Xbox 360. And in that, they had, multiplayer between PC and Xbox players. But the way that they balanced it was they had a specific sort of campaign and storyline and races and characters that you could play on PC, and a specific bunch of characters that you could play on Xbox. So they sort of basically limited each particular thing so that they could balance them between the two. So you didn't just give everyone the same thing. You actually gave also an incentive to try it out on different platforms as well.
Right.
Because it's kind of like it's a mix between sort of cyberpunk and fantasy. That's the kind of world. So they had some sort of fantasy races on PC and some ones on Xbox, which were specific for each one. So
I didn't actually think of it in terms of content delivery. I just thought of it in terms of just playing against each other. But that's interesting that you would still want to encourage people to try it on either.
Yeah, and
not just sell one.
There's inherent advantages as well to playing between the two different consoles. We talked about Rocket League earlier, and the thing, Rocket League has a bunch of exclusive content that is, platform specific. So what happens when you play against someone who's playing on an Xbox One, who's driving around in a Warthog, and you're playing on a PlayStation?
I want that Warthog a lot.
Do they pop up as a generic car, or how does that work? I mean, there's a lot of different...
Is that asset even in the PlayStation version?
There's so many bugs to sort out with, with every single game as well. And like, I feel like this is going to, Rocket League is one where you're not going to have as many problems, I feel like, because it's a little bit more of a balanced platform game.
Yeah.
But, say your serious first-person shooters or whatever, there's a vast difference in gameplay ability, I guess, there. Which
for something like your Call of Duties, for example, playing between consoles, it seems very easy.
Super
So, for example, what you could do is make teams on... one team is on Xbox and one team is on PlayStation.
Yeah,
and those teams can talk to themselves and each other, but can't talk to the opposite team. And that way you can kind of segregate between the two of them. But then you run the risk that maybe one platform will be underrepresented, and there won't be enough people on a particular team, and then maybe you just actually have to play a whole Xbox game.
Do you think that this move is because Xbox as a whole is underselling compared to PS4?
Absolutely. And I'm glad. Sorry, keep going again.
And do you think that
do you
want...
think not?
Well, I just think it's very interesting that Xbox had no interest in going cross-platform many years ago when PlayStation was doing it, and when Xbox were on top. But now PlayStation's kind of back in the hot ring, they're on the hot seat. Xbox is all about it. It's just
and they
comical.
want people to join their environment via any way possible, even by our Windows 10 story that we covered last week. Or was
Yeah.
it last week?
And
Yeah.
I think this is probably moves in when we were talking about that in the previous week, where this is probably the move that they're making is they want to have one standard platform that everyone can kind of sit on, regardless of Windows or Xbox. But then also put in enough hooks in there so that people can build in cross-platform stuff. And for games, for example, like the one engine that they actually mentioned was something called Monogame, and Square Heroes is a game that uses Monogame to develop for that. And something like Square Heroes that we've featured before would make perfect sense to be multiplayer because there is no communication in the game. Everyone just kind of moves around on the thing, and you could balance it between Xbox and
the
other
control
consoles.
scheme is pretty. It's pretty different, so that I don't think you'll have any particular advantage.
Well, I beg to differ. We did this
Oh, that's
actually.
true,
We played
yeah.
Square Heroes we were using Xbox controllers, and Gianni was using his PC mouse
Keyboard
and
and
keyboard.
mouse, yeah.
And he absolutely chopped us. And I'm not
Okay.
I'm not just having a bitch, obviously, because we're pretty balanced, I guess, in playing, but not that different.
What if he was just better than you?
Well, maybe, but he was also that much better than James as well. And it was
Okay.
just it's a little bit
Probably
iffy.
not better than James because James owns every game on the planet. So
But yeah, there was an obvious difference between how easy it was to play with the keyboard. I mean, this isn't anything new. We know this difference
Yeah.
exists between controllers and mouse keyboard players, but it's about bridging that gap that I'm concerned about, I guess, and very interested in how they plan to keep it balanced and level.
That being said, I think the console players that exclusively play console, they are more than happy to use a controller when a PC person is using a mouse. Like, I don't think...
I'm not. I'm a devout console player, and I know that if I'm allowed to play with PC players and there's no kind of, I guess, handicap or balancing that done there, that I'm going to be unfairly kind of outgunned in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but I feel that if someone was to say, all right, like, let's use Destiny as an example. Like, I'll verse you, Mitch, in Destiny, but I'm going to be using a keyboard and mouse. I'll be like, sure, why not? Because the Destiny experience I know and that I'm good at is with a controller.
But that's
Yeah,
it.
that's-
Enjoyability and performance are not the same thing.
I guess that's true.
I guess if you're just playing in like a fun match with your friends, it doesn't really matter. But say, for example, in a competitive thing where response times on mice and keyboard and delay and all that sort of stuff is a big thing, like milliseconds matter and those sort of things. So I can see it not, there'd be a standardized format of hardware basically.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe it won't be fun to play with people across platform, and maybe you'll just go, actually, I'm going to lock it down to my particular platform because it's not actually fun, and maybe it won't be enjoyable to join up with your friends on a different platform because it basically means you're just playing in the same game but you're not actually talking to each other, or maybe you'll have to actually call them on Skype or something or on the phone in order to actually have that communication
That's
between the two.
it. For this to really work and really take off and be super successful, there needs to be a good amount of balance, and there needs to be no limitations. I mean, we need to be able to talk to each other. We need to be able to go into the same.
Maybe a standardization of
Something.
voice chat formats,
Maybe
for
like-
example. Maybe there's an open voice chat format they can have, and maybe there's an open party format that
An
they can
open server system for just people that are playing cross platforms. Whereas if you want to play, normally, you've still got your normal PlayStation Network or your
and it
Xbox
also makes
Live or whatever.
It makes exclusive a bit more interesting as well, because then people will definitely buy whatever the exclusive is, because then you can still get any other game and play with any other person depending on the console. It's not so much of a thing like, look, I'm not going to buy that because my friends all have this and I can't.
Well, the
play with them.
exclusive stuff might just go away because now, like, if you buy Destiny, there are certain guns that you can access in Destiny that the other one can't. And suddenly, you're going to enter this multiplayer game with, if you're an Xbox player, you're going to enter a multiplayer game with a PS4 player that potentially has better gear than you or more options.
It's going to be
It's
interesting.
just so
Definitely from a commercial perspective. Look, that's all we've got time for today. Thank you very much for joining us for another episode of Pixel Sift. We hope you enjoyed the show. Now, it's our pleasure to announce the winners of our World's Fastest Pizza competition. Thanks to Oscar Britton, who joined us last week, for giving us some keys to give away.
Yay.
The winners for the competition are Will D, Blair P, Corinna M, Bevan H, and Arthur D. Congratulations, and thank you for everyone who entered. We'll be emailing you your Steam keys later today, and we're looking forward to giving out more things out in the future as well. We have a website. It's www.pixelsift.com.au. Scott, where can people go if they want to find us on social media?
People, you can find us at facebook.com/pixelsift, twitter.com/pixelsift, twitch.tv/pixelsift, and youtube.com/pixelsiftau.
And Mitch, people, if they want to listen to our other episodes...
Yeah, so as you mentioned before, the website, and you can also subscribe on iTunes and Pocket Casts or using the RSS link on our page.
And if you could give us a rating and a review or recommend us to your friends, we'd really appreciate it. It makes a big difference in helping people find our show and gives us a bit more, more people who can give us feedback, the more.
Yeah, it really helps Gianni's self-esteem.
It does.
Good.
But also, we like to hear your feedback as well, so that's
Yeah.
always great. Thanks for joining us. We will see you again next time.
Peace out.
Bye.